Welcome, my name's Will Poynter and I'm going to be the main MC today, and we're going to be looking at Word Cloud Plus and how you'd use that to analyze text data. So really, I call it to jumpstart analyzing text, and then Will Poynter is going to give you a technical overview, and then we're going to go into Q&A where you can ask questions. So Word Cloud Plus has been developed jointly by myself and Will Poynter. And when we get into the conversations, I think you'll be able to tell who did the sort of the big picture loose stuff and who did all the hard work and the technology, but I won't give that away quite yet. So what I'm going to start is a quick illustration of one of the videos that you can access. If you create your Word Cloud Plus, you'll see that one of the videos you can access is called Quick Start. So let's run the Quick Start. So you've created your Word Cloud Plus account and you want to create your first word cloud. Here's how we do it. We start by clicking the Create button. And for this project, I'm going to look at some data that describes what makes a good presentation. The description is optional, so I'm going to leave that for the moment. And I need to paste in to the content window all of the items, all of the text that I want to analyze. So I've got some loaded here. I'm going to copy that, come back here, and we're going to paste that in. And once I've done that, I simply click the Save button. And it might take one or two iterations. If you've pasted a lot of data in, it can take a few minutes. This is the only time really that it slows down, and it will give you a first go at that. And normally you can improve that, but you could simply export that. You can change the number of terms that it's showing. You can change the proportions that it's using. You can add a title. You can change the zoom. You can click on rearrange, for example, and decide that you want voice to be a bit more over to the side. And you could do that quite a lot. You can take the word content and you can say, I want that to be in bright red. Or you could take the word slides and you could have a look at references, and then it shows you all the sorts of things that people are saying about that. We can change the stop words. We can replace some words. There are many more things we can change. We can go to settings and we can discuss the language we're going to use, the type of algorithm, and so on. But for a quick start, that's how you generate your first word cloud. The next time you log in, you will find that project is there and you can add more projects. So that's very much the quick start. So now I'm going to take some data and I'm going to run through the steps that I use to do some analysis of text data. Clarifying your question and select your data. You can't actually understand text data unless you have a question. And that question could be, what is the main thing people are talking about, or what are the main topics? But you do need a question. You do need your data. And then very, very often you have to clean that data, because if it's come from surveys, open ends, places like that, there's going to be all sorts of challenges in using it. So we do that data cleaning. At the moment, I'm doing that outside of Word Cloud Plus. It's one of the things on the list to discuss about how we might bring that inside. You're going to create an initial word cloud, and then you start refining your analysis, creating a cloud, and thinking about what you're going to do with the analysis next. So this study is in the field at the moment. It's a project by NewMR, and we're looking at the impact of AI over the next 10 years. So I've just grabbed the data at the current moment in time, and I'm going to use that as an illustration. So I've taken the data, I've put it into Excel. I've got two columns. The first column is which one word best describes what you think about the impact of artificial intelligence. And when you're doing a word cloud, if you ask people which one word describes something or comes into mind, it makes your word clouding really easy. The second one is a bit of a longer piece of text. What else would you like to tell us about AI or automation? And a quick warning that we don't want your name in there or too much abuse. So let's have a look and see how that works. So I can select both columns because we want to tidy up both of these. I'm going to go first of all to language, and I'm going to tell it that I want the data to be in US English. We tend to get more data spelt the US way. We don't want the UK spelling and the Australian spelling and the American spelling all to be different. So we're going to tell it we'd like them in one language, and we want that one language to be US English. And then we're going to pick the spelling, and it's going to work its way through. And the first one that it's come to is behaviour, and it's being spelt in the British way. So what we will do is we will go to behaviour, and we're going to tell it to change all of those when it comes to them. The next one is a misspelling of efficiency. Somebody has spelled it EFFEC. So we're going to say, yes, change all of those to efficiency. Now we've got another one, which is ResTech. And actually, we're happy with ResTech. So we're going to say, ignore all. Optimize, we want it to be with a Z, instead of with an S. So we're going to say, change all. Optimized, we're going to say, change all. Organizational, it's another Z change. And because I keep saying change all, this process is going to get a bit faster. We're on row 35 already. Not in the dictionary, so we've got a misspelling of mundane. The N is missing. So we're going to change all of these to mundane, spelt the same way. Etc. Should we change it to have a full stop at the end? We might as well. We don't particularly like etc. It's going to get as a stop word later anyway. But we'll change all of those. It's just a little bit easier to do that. Researcher misspelled. We want to change all of those to be researcher. Finalize with an S. We want a Z. What have we got? Believe. Again, it's just a standard misspelling. Chat GPT. Absolutely want to ignore all of those. We want to leave those as Chat GPT. Researchers, standard misspelling, change all of them. Digitalize, we want those S to Z. Chat GPT, we want to ignore all of those. That's just with different capitals in it. Now here we've got Chat GPT with a space in it. So actually I'm going to do something slightly different now. I'm going to go to that cell. I'm going to tell it that ChatGPT should not have a space, and it should have a P, not a B. Online, just a standard spelling mistake. Designed, standard spelling mistake. Game changing, one word. Well, that's actually in the one word column, so I'm going to leave that there. Inciters, yeah, that's just an expression we're going to use, so we'll ignore all of those. Democratizing, we want to change it to the Z. Homogenizing with a Z. MRX is a label, so we're just going to ignore all of those. Acceleration, spelling mistake. So I'm in Word Cloud Plus, and I'm going to go create a project. Name of the project, which one impact. Which one word describes AI's impact? From early data from 2023 wave. And now we want the data itself to be put into here. So I'm going to go across to that Excel file we had, and I'm going to select all of those single words, ignoring, of course, the heading. We're go back and we'll paste them in. And I'm going to click Save. And this is the first guess of what the word cloud should look like. Now, this is a special case. I've only got, in almost all cases, a single word. So I'm not looking for phrases. So I'm actually going to change the algorithm this time. And instead of our normal starting algorithm, which is combination counting, I'm going to tell it I want frequency. I want the max phrase length to be one word. And we will go back and have a look at the cloud. So probably that hasn't changed it very much. So what are the biggest words that are coming through? Efficiency, exciting, transformational, disruptive. So something that might be interesting to do is to look and see which of these words are negative. So disruptive is negative. So I'm going to tell it to put this into red. And I'm going to copy that hex code just there. We're going to make this a little bit easier to use in the future. And we go back, and now disruptive is there. So what else looks like it's a bit of a negative sort of phrase? Scary and frightening. Yeah, well, let's put those into the same sort of category. So I'm just looking for words that are going to group themselves together nicely. Now, potentially, that's kind of curious. So I'm going to click on potentially, and I'm going to click on references. And so it came up twice, potentially transformational, potentially disruptive. So potentially isn't actually helping me in the analysis. So let's go here, and let's say potentially is now a stop word. It's not going to appear because it simply moderates what the next word was. It shouldn't appear in a list of single words. Profound, speak, hype, helpful, unpredictable, inevitable, chat GPT, game-changing, powerful, data, limited. So let's just have a look and see whether it was. And they're single phrases, so they're quite legitimate. So we'll probably, in my mind, but maybe not your mind, I'm going to make that also a red phrase. It's not particularly positive. So I'm already beginning to get the impression that the single word impacts are mostly positive. There's not many that I'm going to look at as red. And the biggest single phrase is efficiency. But actually, we also probably want to look at things like exciting, transformational, transformative, revolution, revolutionary, significant. And we may want to do a colour scheme around those. So we could make this a more attractive cloud. We could move it around, but I think we've got the picture of broadly what's going on in those open ends. We can look at the summary, and that tells us that there are 251 phrases in there, 436 words. In a perfect world, we would have 251 items and 251 words if everybody had used a single word. In fact, on average, it gets to 2 because 1 or 2 people are very verbose. Efficiency is mentioned 14 times, significant, exciting. Quite often, I find this summary page is more useful in pulling that information together. And I might look down here to see if I want to recode some of these things together. So we might say revolutionary and revolution. They're really quite similar. So maybe, and my spelling's not great, so I'm going to copy that. We're going to go to replace, and I'm going to replace all the revolutionaries with revolution. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to back to the cloud, and revolution is now a bigger phrase up here. And we could take that through. We could, of course, go even further and start grouping together transformation and revolution. But I've already got the picture. I'm comfortable that I can see what's going on here. So that was the first of our challenges. What are the big message from the single words? It's around change. Negative is disruption, seems to be relatively rare, much stronger about transformational, exciting, revolution, significant, huge, helpful. And the single key phrase that we see coming through, efficiency. That is as far as we can get with that one word area in terms of the word cloud. Now, if we had the same data in 12 months' time or 12 months ago, we could put the two word clouds next to each other, or we could put the two summaries next to each other and see what had changed. That would also be interesting. So now let's look at the longer text that we had before, which was looking at what else did people want to tell us. So we're going to create a new project. Longer discussion about the impact of AI. I'm going to skip the, oh, no, I'll put the description. So from partial data Jan 2023. And let's go and collect the data. So we go back to that Excel file, and this time we'll paste it in. We'll scroll down to the save button, and here is our first interpretation. And we've got some phrases coming through now. This is the combination counting. It tends to favor phrases. And we've got some quite big things going on in terms of AI and AI automation and lots of other bits and pieces going on. So I'm going to actually play around with a few of the parameters to make it easier to see. But before I do that, I'm going to go to summary. And what have we got? Okay, so AI is mentioned 127 times. It has a slightly lower score because it's frequently mentioned in other categories. AI and automation is mentioned 13 times, but it's got a score which is 5 times bigger, which is the standard default. And actually, that's probably too much. We've got market research and market researchers. So I'm going to check what's going on there in a moment. And we've got this reference to 10 years. So I'm going to check what's going on there as well. But first of all, I'm going to change these settings. I talked about I'm using the scoring algorithm combination counting. And I want to change that weight from its standard weight. I'm going to go all the way down to 1. And we're going to have a look. And we're going to change the scale a bit now because it's all a bit tight in the middle, isn't it? So let's just zoom it in a bit. AI and automation, AI research, still not really taking me anywhere that's super straightforward. So I'm going to start looking at some of these phrases. So let's look first of all at this big one, AI. We'll go to the references. AI will be huge enabler. Right, okay, so we're talking about artificial intelligence. We actually don't want AI to be one of the words that's coming through in the analysis. Since we've asked it in the question, it's not helpful for us. So, straightforward option is that we're going to take AI and we're going to make it a stop word. So now let's go back at the map. Right, okay. Now you need to take that scroll, that zoom back to a standard picture. And we've got a quite different picture. What is the impact of AI? Well, it's going to be on market research. It's going to be on research. It's going to be on market researchers. It's on researchers. So let's see if we can tidy up some of that language to get a bit closer. We're also going to have a look at the summary again. So up at the top end, research, market research, researchers, market researchers. So again, I'm going to make my life a little bit simpler. I'm going to go to the cloud. I'm going to go to the word market research, and I'm going to take market out, because in this context where everybody's talking about market researchers, some people have said researchers, some people have said market researchers. So it's easier for me to make a stop word out of that. We'll go back. Okay, so now we're beginning to get a little bit more of a pattern. We can see that research is coming through and researchers. Are they different? Let's have a look. References. With AI in research, the secondary research. So all of those mean research. Let's look at researchers. Yep, they are talking about people. So one is the subject, one is the topic. We're going to see it have an impact on those. Fraudulent bots. Let's have a look at the references. Could prevent the use of fraudulent bots. On the other hand, may encourage the use of fraudulent bots. Yeah. So that's quite nice that that's coming through, but we've probably got too many phrases on there. So let's drop this down to 30 phrases. So where is the impact going to be of artificial intelligence? It's going to be on research, and it's going to be on researchers. That's fine. So let's do a little bit of color coding. So we've got people over there, but let's make people blue. I'm going to color that. And researchers are also going to be blue. And are there any other there that you said industry? Humans. So let's see whether or not that is people in the same sense. And we'll look at the reference. Understanding fellow humans. No. So now humans is about the subject. So we're starting to see that we have got the subject we're analysing. We've got the people that we're working with, and we've got the topic itself, research. But we've got humans and human. Let's see if humans and human are broadly the same thing. So we'll go to references. We're replacing human intelligence. Humans will start to beat AI. Human have to replace human in the loop. Human professionals will still be needed. We still need the human element. So actually we're seeing that humans and human are generally a different thing. I can't combine those two into a single phrase, because one is the way of thinking, the other is the sort of people that we're analysing. So let's take these humans up here and we'll give those a nice bright green. And we'll copy the code. And we're going to take these humans, this human, sorry, and we're going to give that a different coding. We'll give that a red coding. And I can start putting these different sorts of color codes in to help me see what the picture is. And I can also, if I want to, rearrange things around. So this people up here, I can take it and I can drag it next to researchers. And I'm going to take researchers and drag it next to people. And I can do a lot of that dragging and dropping to put things together that I think need to be in the same sort of area. So we've got, for example, automation. We've got grunt work over here. We've got fraudulent bots. So that maybe is a potentially problem area. And over here, we've got lots of potential. So we might want to put those on the opposite sides of the map until we take them through. When we're talking about things that can be analysed, well, humans is one thing that can be analysed. Open ends would be a thing that can be analysed. We can start looking at human touch and keep working our way through until we get an understanding. And all the time, I'm looking at where they are, how I've colour coded them, and then I'm going back and I'm looking at what people are actually saying in there. So take away effort and grunt effort, which is good for talented researchers. It's really exciting where it takes the grunt work away, while automation of the grunt work is good and should happen. So we keep seeing that where grunt work is mentioned, it's a positive thing. It's a clue that something's positive is going on. So I'm not using the word cloud to tell me what the answer is. I'm using the word cloud to tell me which group of words and which phrases I should be reading next. And once I've done that, I can start making my own analysis. And my analysis probably won't be a word cloud. It will be some descriptive text of what's going on. So very early days, that was about 16 minutes work. And obviously, if I was analysing text, I would probably spend at least an hour. What did I see? I saw that in terms of one word, it was mostly positive. That was my first takeaway from that. There were some negatives, but it was mostly positive, and it was about efficient, and it was about focusing on transformation, revolution, and it was likely to be a big impact. I then started looking at the longer text to get some phrases, and we can see there is a conversation to be had about the roles of researchers. There are conversations about the type of research we will do, the need for the human in that process, but also respecting the people and humans we research, and some stuff about the business of research. How is it going to be done? And I would take those next if I had finished the data collection, which actually won't finish until this coming weekend, and go to each of those headings and read them through. So historically, you might read text by starting at the top and working your way down. And what I'm suggesting is that word cloud allows you to see some structures and start reading that text. I'm only going to have 300 or 400 open ends. I could read all of them. If I had 300,000, this sort of technique will tell me which 50 to 100 open ends I should read around this topic, which 50 to 100 open ends should I read around that topic. I can see there's lots of questions coming into the Q&A, so we will get to them shortly. But I'm now going to hand over to Will Poynter, who's going to give a technical overview. Hi, Will.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, everyone. So although this is going to be a technical overview, I'm going to try and keep it quite brief, quite light, and hopefully relevant. For those that are more interested in the more technical side of how you build a tool like Word Cloud Plus using modern engineering, I'm always happy to chat engineering on LinkedIn. So I'm going to cover 3 key areas. First one, possibly the most important of all things, security and compliance. It's very important when developing any tool that works with data that it is secure and it is compliant. And early on, we had to make a decision whether to develop this as a desktop application, like we typically see with things like SPSS, or develop it as a web application, which is actually more common if generating tools that just generate word clouds. And we chose to create this as a web application. In doing so, this can create certain problems with security compliance because of the transfer of data back and forth across the internet, which is why we also made the decision to do all of the processing locally on the client's device, meaning that all that happens is that you pull down the code for Word Cloud Plus in your browser, and then it does all of the processing locally, all of the source text and the resulting cloud that's generated, meaning no data is being transferred over the internet. This takes away a lot of headaches in security and compliance. Nothing leaves your machine. For full transparency as well, we do collect some usage statistics. So we know, for instance, how large are the source texts that are being entered and how long screens are taking to load. And this allows us to refine the product and make sure it's more performant. You may have noticed earlier in the presentation, Ray said about some larger source text can take a minute or so to load. Well, actually, recently that's been addressed, and I have been testing the Word Cloud Plus with some source text that are more than 10 times the size of any other uploaded, and we've got the load time down in under 10 seconds. But we're going to keep an eye on that going forward. An advantage to the decision of developing a web app versus a desktop app is the ability to release new versions and new features much more rapidly with much less overhead. As I say, when you have a desktop application like SPSS, for example, users need to update it themselves, and companies need to be able to package and deliver those updates, which is actually quite an involved process. Web apps are much quicker to upload, and so therefore we've been able to get into a rhythm of releasing new features on roughly a weekly basis. If we look at weeks 5 to 8, we've been able to release the ability for users to select their scoring algorithm, the ability to customize individual phrases, which is two of these features that you've seen Ray using earlier on in the presentation. Very exciting. Word Cloud Plus will scan the source text, make a prediction as to what language is being used, and then load the appropriate stop words. We currently support 50 languages. And finally, in week 8 there, another feature that you saw Ray using, being able to click on a phrase and see where it is referenced inside the source text, which is particularly good for drilling in to understand what is happening. So that gives a feel of the sort of features that we've been able to deliver recently. And these are the product of feedback from our users. So we're very keen to hear feedback from people that are using Word Cloud Plus and guide us on what are the most important features for our users. So when you're logged into Word Cloud Plus, you may notice at the bottom left-hand portion of the screen at the bottom of the navigation menu is a button Give Feedback. This is a very short form allowing people to add comments, feature suggestions, and so forth. And because of our rapid release cycle, we're able to incorporate these quickly. And finally, I just wanted to give a teaser of some things that are coming up in the next few weeks. Yet again, as part of the feedback we received. One thing that we've heard in the feedback multiple times is that the resulting clouds are not yet aesthetically pleasing enough. They're not pretty enough. One of the challenges in doing this is being able to pack the terms in correctly, so they create an image that's pleasing to the eye. And one of the challenges that is understanding where the boundary of the phrases are. So you can see in red that is the boundary that we're currently using, this bounding box, and we are now developing algorithms that determine a convex hull that is much tighter fitting around the phrases, and this will allow us to develop nicer packing algorithms to produce a more aesthetically pleasing output. You also may have noticed occasionally Ray was coloring particular phrases, and it was quite an involved process, picking the color out of the full range of RGB color palette, but then having to copy and paste hex codes around to have a consistent color. So obviously this is more fiddly than we'd like it to be, and we're working on defining several default color palettes or predefined color palettes that users can use to get going quickly, and allowing users to specify their own color palette so they can manage their corporate branding and then reuse these colors at ease. And I think with that, Ray, I'll hand back over to you.
Thanks, Will. And we're ready for Q&A. There are some already in the platform, and we'll start at the top and work through, but please do ask further questions. So the first one is I'll start, and Will, you join in if you think that I'm off the mark. Does it differentiate between capitalized and non-capitalized words? Does it require that capitalization to create phrases? So one of the first bits of analysis that happens is it puts everything in lowercase, and it removes excess spaces. How does it recognize phrases? It uses carriage returns, it uses full stops, it uses commas. One of the things that we are still looking to fine tune is different punctuation in different languages, and when is that punctuation? So a dash, is it a hyphen and we want to leave it there because it's holding things together, or is this dash to say that this is no longer the same phrase? So there's still work to do, but that's more or less where we are. Will, any thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Ray. There is also an aspiration to use a level of AI to recognize entities within the text and potentially protect their capitalization. So what in English are proper nouns. An example that just brings to mind, because I'm in London right now, is Big Ben. Big is a stop word as recognized in the UK corpus, but Big Ben with the capitalization shouldn't ever be separated. The big shouldn't be dropped. And we know this. And so we've got this aspiration to include a certain level of AI to pick up on terms like Big Ben, realize it's a proper noun, and correctly bind those two words together without removing the space, so they're never separated. But yet again, we follow what are our users telling us. So although that was an idea right at the beginning, we actually haven't had too many issues around that area yet. And so we haven't prioritized working on that particular feature.
So we've got, the next question is, how can we combine responses? And I'm not 100% sure about what exactly you're asking there. So if I don't answer the right question, type it in again with a bit more additions. So we have the automated element within this, that it will recognize these words next to each other. They're occurring next to each other fairly often. We can also use the replace function that I showed you to bring revolution and revolutionary together, if when we look at the words, they make sense to bring them together. But if you remember, I didn't bring together human and humans because they were, generally speaking, representing something different. So we're using the human brain to make a bit more sense of that process. You could, of course, also go to the text file and you could put in dashes to put things that were separate. We could go and look for all the game changes and we could bring those together. If we've got responses from different studies, then we can simply put them all in the same text file, and that would work that way as well. So that's 2 or 3 different ways where we might be combining responses that maybe you're asking something else. The next question, can you overlay sentiment onto the word cloud, positive, negative, and neutral words to auto-code the color? So until you said auto-code, well, kind of yes, because you could run through any of the free sentiment tools, run that through the phrases and identify which of those should be in those colors. Autocode is really something we would like. It's not at the top of the list at the moment, and we'll need to think about where. So we really wouldn't want to run auto-coding sentiment on single word answers. Is revolutionary a good or a bad thing? Well, it depends really whether you're the government or you're trying to invent a new technology. So it's so context. You need sentences and you need longer phrases really to be able to bring those into play. So Will, you've looked at things like sentiment and how we might go about it.
Yes, absolutely. And yet again, it'll be one where we listen to our users to determine prioritization. What we are thinking currently in this space is, do we allow Word Cloud Plus to integrate with other tools so other tools can do color coding? And now that may be color coded because of sentiment, or it may be color coded because of all manner of different things in which that tool determines. An example would be to color code people's names, or to color code certain other pieces of data that we might be interested in. So keeping Word Cloud Plus generic and then allowing it to work with other tools in which then we can express another dimension on Word Cloud Plus may be the right way to go, or maybe trying to integrate with them directly is yet to reveal itself.
So the next question, if you demonstrated how to take a combination of words or phrases for counting, and how can you put the phrases, could you put the phrase into quotes and could it be counted, for example? Generally, there isn't a need to put it into quotes. If you really wanted to tightly bound it and throw away the exception is where you might change game changing or game changes with a space in to make the single word. But the algorithms deal with counting the frequencies. And at the simplest, we have frequency counting, which counts how often does every single word occur? How often does every pair of words, they're sometimes called bigrams, occur? How often does every trigram occur? And that will tell us what should be in there. We then move to what we call deductions. So if we've got fish and chips, So what is your favorite meal? Somebody says fish. Somebody else says fish and chips. Somebody else says chips. Fish is mentioned twice. Chips are mentioned twice. But fish and chips is borrowing those. So in the deductions algorithm, we would take one off the chips count and we would take one off the fish count. And that's kind of a neutral way of looking at phrases. Then in our combination counting, we actually upweight fish and chips because in most of the data I work with, phrases reveal much more meaning. Combinations of words reveal much more meaning, so we upweight them. And you saw me sliding that scale along. You can slide it all the way to 0, so it's like deductions, or you can move it to the right, so it really, really favors phrases. And there will be more algorithms in the future looking at that sort of effect.
Ray, that may move on nicely to a question we received in the chat functionality. Would you like me to read it to you?
Well, you read it to everybody, and yes.
Of course, yes. So we've been asked in the chat, how does your tool differ from other word cloud tools? What makes it better? Why did you create this? It's a triple question.
So I think that I am going to start at the end in that most of the word clouds don't do what I want them to do. They sometimes produce very nice pictures. The most common type of word cloud just looks at single words and frequencies. Some of the others certainly do pull some phrases through. But what I want is something that's going to make me more effective. I want to be able to process data, but I want to add in all the stuff that I already know. I'm working on the quant bit of the survey, and I want to be able to look at the qual bit and make a coherent sense. I want to be able to drive the analysis. I want to be able to look at it and say, okay, AI is not relevant. If I say, what do you think about AI in the future? I don't need the word AI in the word cloud because it's not helpful. I want to be able to look, as I did, at what is the difference between research and researchers? Because quite often, automated tools will do stemming and they would just get rid of the plural. They'd make it all the singular. It would be wrong in this data to do that, and it would be right in other data. So we're actually making the tool harder to use in some ways than a lot of other word cloud generators because it's about digging deeper. And that is the why. I wanted a word cloud for people like me. I'm just hoping there's enough of them. So, Will, any thoughts on that? And then we're going to come back to a bit more about the sentiment.
No, I think you covered it there.
Great. Okay, so this is the question about the sentiment analysis. I was thinking using this on the themes rather than words, which is absolutely right. We would agree entirely, where we predefined which sentiment they've been assigned to. So if we imagine that every phrase was given a sentiment score, then we could look in the word cloud and say any phrases or words that occurred, score them back, color code them back against that score. So we'd have to add another field to the data, which was the sentiment, and then run through, and you could pull that through. So I could see how it could be done. I wouldn't guess when we would do that or whether that would end up in the free version at some point down the route. I could see how you could sort of do it with two tools, using ours, as Will said earlier, and something else. But it would be nice to be more integrated.
Would you like me to take the next question? I'll read it out and answer it if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the question is, what is the maximum text that could be included? For example, can an entire book be analyzed, and how would that large amount of text be imported? It's a really good question, and the two performance tests this tool I think about 2 weeks ago, I uploaded the entire Old and New Testament because it's a publicly available large text, and found that it was still able to analyze in under 10 seconds on my laptop, which is about 1 year old. So it's not the oldest of laptops, but not the newest either. So it can handle large sets of text for sure. At the moment, it is only possible to copy and paste the text in which, admittedly, my laptop wasn't that pleased with having the entire of the Bible in its clipboard. And yet again, so we have got as a potential feature the idea of uploading files, either text files or CSVs, Excel files, and so forth, or integrating it in with direct URLs. You can point it directly at a website. And we're just trying to find out essentially how important is that to different users. In our early testing, not many people have asked for other importing methods, but if it is important to you, I encourage you to give feedback and let us know, and that will get it prioritized more quickly.
And certainly if you're looking to experiment with Word Cloud Plus, one of the things I would say is go to Project Gutenberg and get a copy of a book you know really well, and paste that in and see how you'd go about playing with it. So I did that over Christmas, for example, with A Christmas Carol. It works quite quickly, and it generates some interesting things. And in fact, I'm just going to talk about The Christmas Carol for a second. It tells you who are the main characters. It tells you the situations that it's at Christmas. It tells you the relationships between some of the characters. But the word cloud does not tell you it's a book about redemption. You can sort of get there when you follow it through. So one of the most common phrases in the book is cried Scrooge. And when you look at all the times it occurs, it starts off with arrogance, it moves into fear, and then it becomes out the other side and finishes with Merry Christmas, cried Scrooge. So it will give you some hints about how to find the meaning, but it isn't going to find the meaning for you on its own. Now, we've not had the question, one of the questions that I was expecting, so I'll ask it and we'll see if Will can answer. Does it do Japanese and Chinese?
Thank you for throwing me that question. The short answer is, I would say, is not yet to any reliable standard. I mean, you speaking and reading Japanese, you can critique that better than I can. We are still in the process of creating a collection of tokenizers. These are bits of software that break sentences into their constituent parts. So in the case of English, that's typically spaces, although occasionally hyphens. The spaces, don't, as you know, are not how words are broken up in Japanese and Chinese. And so we need appropriate tokenizers to break the words up there. And this is true actually for several other languages as well.
But the good news is it does work in a large number of languages. We've had people using it in French, German, Finnish, which is a highly inflected language. It still works well in the eyes of the people who've tested it. We don't have the language skills ourselves. So I think that is everything in terms of the questions. So thank you for coming along and joining us. I really hope, if you've not had a chance yet, that you do play with it. It is free. It's going to continue to be free. We're hoping that there will be a paid for super duper version down the road, but the really useful version, the basic version, is going to be free ongoing. So with that, I will say cheerio to all of you and thank you very much. And thank you, Will, for joining me today, and say goodbye.